Well, it's that time of the week again where we all get together, huddle round and try not to add too many games to our backlogs. Congratulations to the winner of the free game from last week. Pop us an email, nice one. Now, I'm not a huge fan of horror and scary things, but there are a couple of slightly unnerving games in here, alongside some very nice ones. So I've tried to balance it out. There's also a new section where we have a look at some games only available in specific regions, just to make sure we don't miss any really good ones. Don't forget to save yourself money if you're buying digitally or physically. All the links are in the description. Okay, alright then. What's on sale? Well, my name is Mark Walker. Welcome back to SwitchUp. Now, let's find out. First up then, I thought we would put probably the best Sonic game we have on Switch, and that's Sonic Mania, minus 60% at the moment, until October the 31st, and it comes in at just 390 megabytes. Now, I'm all for some modern things and shiny graphics and things like that, but for me, Sonic in this old 2D style just works so well. We are hoping to bring you some form of review for the new one, but if you're after probably, in my opinion, the best one we've got on Switch, then Sonic Mania is the way to go. It's a complete love letter to the original games, and they even put in a few different moves for some of the stages. It has 1 or 2 player local co-op, so you can grab a joycon each and do some sprinting and running and rolling. It always used to annoy me when I was a kid because I could never save all the animals at the end. Like, was there actually a way of like getting all of the animals? I feel like I missed a fundamental part of Sonic. Although this is a sponsored section, in actual fact we did a whole video on this one the other day and I would happily recommend it on its sale price. It's called Garden Buddies and it's a game designed entirely to relax you. On the one hand, you've got a 90-minute or so story mode that sees you gathering different creatures and animals to your garden, doing jobs for them, and those jobs will basically involve little mini games. If you ever played Guitar Hero, there's one that mimics that very closely. Then there's one that's almost like Simon Says where you're copying what they're doing. And then in between that, you're trying to meet their needs by gradually building up that garden. It has a delightful soundtrack, and I think Glen mentioned that it looks quite a bit like Viva Pinata, has a bit of that vibe about it. So if you're after something that's just super relaxing, has a really nice story, and is from a very small indie team, then consider Garden Buddies. It's just 1.4 gigabytes to download. You can play those mini games separately if you like, and it takes it down to just £4.49, that's 67% off. That sale goes on until November the 19th. Once again, thanks to those guys for sponsoring this episode. "13 Sentinels" is down 60% in all regions, and it's one of the first games that started to get me looking towards some visual novel style experiences. Now it isn't that, this is kind of a hybrid between a Persona-like RPG and these strategic mech-based combat battles. Now that might sound like a mouthful, it's because it's just difficult to describe, to be honest. I think I would have preferred if they used like real graphics, and you kind of know what I mean, hopefully by what's on screen, but it switches to this like overview that actually makes them quite quick, and that works well. Then the story, which spans over several different time periods, keeps things really interesting. I was impressed, and it was funny enough, I played this before Persona 5, and I think it holds up. Like, I'm not saying they're the same genre or anything, but in terms of storytelling, I thought this was great. And it didn't go too crazy in terms of being like 900 years long. So yeah, $19.99 or your regional equivalent until October the 31st. Now everyone knows Alien Isolation. They know that Feral did an incredible job of bringing it to the Switch in its early days as well, to be fair, before we had all of the technical know-how on how the Switch works and sometimes doesn't. And at the moment it's 33% off, down to £9.99. That is a really good price. Now what I will say about Alien Isolation is it's a first-person survival horror game where you're obviously trying to avoid the Xenomorph, that's the alien in the films. But the scariest thing in it are the androids. They're absolutely terrifying. Best thing to do is to just hide and avoid them at all costs. Now it's actually quite a chunky old game, it's quite long. It features, I think it's either the daughter of Ripley or it's the daughter, isn't it? It's not like the cousin or like, I don't know, the second niece of Ripley. That doesn't have quite the same ring, does it? It features Ripley's next door neighbour, Agnes. But yeah, I did enjoy it, and I'm not a big horror fan, so if I can work my way through it, then you can as well. Plays really well on the Switch. We do have both a normal and a performance review of this one. Now, Alan Wake Remastered is 50% off. As you know, when this first dropped on Switch, it was a nightmare for all the wrong reasons. The performance was just terrible, like it was so bad. And having the remastered title next to games that, have shocking performance on Switch is like a punch to the gut. But thankfully, after a couple of patches, this now runs absolutely flawlessly in terms of performance, so performance is fine. Visually, you're still getting a mild dose of Vaseline to each eye, but it's a very dark game, and it's one where the gameplay is the most important thing. So you have a torch that you can shine on these strange aberrations. Is that the right word? I'm going to go with it. And it dissolves their defences, and then you can do damage with a normal pistol. It was a really simple mechanic at the time when it came out, but I hadn't seen it done before, and it made something that could be very scary into something where you felt like you still had control, and obviously you have to save ammunition and things like that. But yeah, I just liked it a lot. I like the little narration as well. You play as an author, obviously, called Alan Wake. Well, it's not actually obvious, is it at all, by the title? And the sequel, I think, is about to come out, or has it already come out? I haven't heard much fanfare if it has, but yeah, half price at the moment until October the 31st. That's a patched up Alan Wake Remastered. I kind of wrote off Astria Ascending until we mentioned it in an interesting games video, and I basically just sat there, like you lot, and listened to Glen's reasoning for why he'd enjoyed it so much. And it started to really entice me. I think initially I was kind of put off by the visuals. I don't know how I would describe them. They do look a little bit like that Flash style in terms of some of the animations, but actually I think that's kind of not really doing justice to some of the quality of the artwork that's here. There are some RPG elements here, but the way that he described the story and how it does get better the further in you get, it did start to hook me. So maybe check out that episode. Perhaps I'll pop a link to that in the description. But Astria Ascending at the moment, I believe, is 50% off, and again that's till October the 31st. Taking it down to $17.99, so it's a little bit more of an investment than some of the others, but from what I'm told, it is very much worth it. You wouldn't think that the best or one of the best Metroidvanias we've got on Switch is actually based on one of the worst films. It's The Mummy Demastered, and yeah, it's, I'm not saying The Mummy is a bad film. The Mummy's a great film. The original, well, great in the sense of nostalgia for the win. But the Tom Cruise sequel was pretty damn pants, and I believe that's what this one's based on. But they managed to make a much better game. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this comes from Way Forward, and if it is, then that kind of explains why the game is much better than the film. But having said that, Way Forward do tend to release some absolutely pony, licensed games, alongside some amazing, just independent ones. And this seemed to, for some reason, fall on the amazing side. At the moment it's £8.99, it's half price until October the 31st, and yeah, if you do like Metroidvanias, this ticks all the boxes. One of the best soundtracks and styles of a game that I've played in recent years comes from Return of the Obra Dinn. That's half price again, and it's a cracking game. Now, initially, when I reviewed this way back when Mark Wahlberg was Marky Mark, I remember titling it something like, this is like the best game you'll never play, because I know that a lot of you will look at this and go, no thanks, not interested. Now, the Obra Dinn, I believe, was a real vessel that actually went missing off the coast, and then when they went to investigate, all the crew were dead. And you play as an investigator from the insurance company, and you've basically got to piece together how everyone died. And it's so clever because you can see these almost, I don't know, how would you describe it? Like these ghostly dramas play out in real time, and you can walk around, freeze the action, and gradually work out who was who. You've got this ship's log, and it's one of those that really does make you feel intelligent. And to be fair, you have got to really use your noggin to get good at this. Not get good at it, but to solve the case. Because you can actually make deductions that are false, and then you'll have to go back and change those. Great game, cracking soundtrack, and there is a physical of this as well if you're interested. Then you've got Soldiers. Now, Soldiers launched in a right sorry state. It was another of these Metroidvanias that has kind of Hollow Knight vibes to it, but it had massive input latency at launch. The load times between areas were shocking, and it just couldn't hold together in terms of frame rates. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess. Now, I'd played this at an expo in London, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months before it came out, and I knew it was a good game, but I had said to them, how are you going to get this performance right, basically? And, well, they didn't. But having said that, after launch, I think we're up to like the 8th patch. It's had so many patches, and I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, because some of the transition load times are still very long, but it is so much better than it was, even down to tweaking some of the gameplay. So in the later areas of the game, it just got ridiculous. And there are still a few difficulty spikes and things, but the actual game's great. You can choose 3 different classes, so there's quite a bit of replayability there as well, because it makes the world of difference. The range class is like, I can't remember, was the range class the easier one? I know one of them I just found so much easier. And then you've got the up close and personal melee soldier. Yeah, good game for sure, but just be aware that it's not a perfect game, but what is? That's £11.69, 35% off until October the 31st. The hidden gem this week then comes from, it's either a one-man team or a 2, I can't remember. But I remember speaking to him and he was so surprised by how everyone, just absolutely loved his game. And it's Vernal Edge. It's 25% off. I think that's the cheapest it's ever been. And it's down to £14.84. Now, while you might say, oh, that's a lot of money, when it's like a solo dev or very, very small team, I am inclined, especially if the game's very good, to still recommend it. And I love this. I did a full review of it. It's a Metroidvania, but it has a real nice twist because you have to travel between these different islands, completely, of your own free choice as to where you go next. But you're flying around in this little airship in almost like a PlayStation style. It looks quality. And then obviously as you unlock your new abilities, which is a token trait of any Metroidvania, you then go back to older places and you're like, oh yeah, I can now reach that area, or I can do this. It was cool. Yeah, it was really cool. Kind of a quirky storyline as well, which I wasn't expecting. Bit of an estranged child thing going on here. Is the villain the father? All this kind of stuff. So yeah, worth checking out. Maybe a little bit more expensive than some games, but I think it's well worth it. I think this scored very highly on SwitchUp. We do have a link to that one as well if you want to go check it out. Then we've got our new section, which is the region-specific section, because it's basically just an excuse to talk about a few more games. First up, we've got Doomsday Hunters, which by far is one of the most addictive roguelites I've played in a long time. Now, if you're not someone that needs to play with someone else, so if you like to play alone, which I sometimes do, definitely do in fact, then Doomsday Hunters is the perfect roguelite. It's 30% off to just £10.70, which is alright, Barjan. And I don't know about you, but I love this art style. It kind of reminds me of old school Amiga games. Some of the best, you remember like Chaos Engine and stuff like that? They had a certain something, like a granularity, if you will, or like a vignette to those visuals, while still having really saturated colours underneath that just make them pop to the eye. And then the controls of this are incredible. You kind of get drop shipped in. You can quickly move between the areas. There's so many different upgrades. They've just got every aspect, in my opinion, for this genre completely spot on. You've got the meta progression in there that makes sense. You've got the different character types, so that makes those runs a little bit more interesting. What I will say is they could do with adding a little bit more end game content. That's not to say you can't redo runs and gradually unlock more items and things like that, but getting to the end and finishing it didn't take me too long. I can't remember what it was exactly, maybe 5 or 6 hours. But after that point, yeah, I think they could do with adding a little bit more, and I'm sure they will because it's been very successful. Now, in the US region, I don't know why we don't have this, but in the US regions, you've got the Dying Light and Call of Juarez bundle, which doesn't seem to even exist for us. Maybe it's, I don't know why it is. I mean, the Australian eShop doesn't even have reference to it at all. So I don't know what's going on there, but you've got it for 82% off, which is just ridiculous. For like 2 amazing games, Dying Light was already good when it launched, and then they patched that up loads. That's basically a first-person zombie RPG with complete free roam. I can't remember if Dying Light 1 had co-op in it. I'm sure it did. Yeah, no, it definitely does. And this definitely does as well, because Glen and I have played it together. So yeah, you can team up with a pal. And it's got all the, well, I'm pretty sure now it's got all of the DLC. And most of that's included. That includes a whole new campaign where you're going around like this countryside farm and stuff. And yeah, really, really good game. Now in the UK, what we've got, which unfortunately America you don't have, is Borderlands 3, the Ultimate Edition, which is so annoying because this only came out literally last week. And I paid top dollar for it so I could get it early to get the old performance review out for you guys. And now it's just 33 quid here in the UK, and it is well worth that. Like, what's that all about? It actually targets 60 frames per second, this, which is unbelievable. Now, the footage you're seeing on the screen might not be 60 FPS just because I downloaded it from our own channel, and when that happens, it goes to 30 for some silly reason. But yeah, it actually runs at 60. It has gyro support. I think the biggest and only issue at the moment is and this is going to sound like a huge issue, but it really isn't. You'll have sporadic crashes. So like every 5 or 6 hours, you might get a random crash. I haven't actually had any, but a good friend of the channel, Lee Wynn, he's like reached end game and he's had a couple. Well, he's had a few to be fair. So the developers are obviously going to have to still work and fix that up. But and it seems to be quite random as well. If you install to internal memory, well, good luck with that for starters because it's so massive. But yeah, really good game. And for that price, I'd say it's worth considering. Which takes us then, good people, onto the SAVALOY selection, or the Fetcook, or the Costco hot dog, or I tell you what, is a nice little snack, but it's not $2.99. It's those meatballs you can get in, what's that shop called? IKEA. Meatballs from IKEA, I do like those. Very tasty. Oh, I'm getting hungry. First up, we've got the Outlast Bundle of Terror, which is 85% off. You can get both Outlast 1 and 2 for £2.99. That is a ridiculous price. These are first person. They're horror games, but they're like survival horror. You can hide in closets and cupboards and peer out weeping. I remember my first playthrough lasted around 45 seconds. I ran into a cupboard and then I switched the game off. I don't like horror. Some of you do. Then in the complete opposite note, we've got Shape of the World. That's 80% off, down to £2.69. A game that you probably won't hear a great deal about. It's like a walking simulator within this strange fantasy world, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was super chill, and it offers a very succinct little experience. Then you've got Down in Bermuda, which is 95% off. This was initially recommended to me from Alex over at Switch Corner, and yeah, it's a great little game, lovely little adventure. Do go and check out his full review of it, but for 99 sponaroonies, 99 pence, 99 beans, 99 tiny coins, you really cannot go too far wrong. That's a crazy price. And last but not least then, for you people that do like slightly scary, old school Resident Evil style experiences, consider White Knight. It's 80% off, down to just £2.69, and it offers a really cool twist with that noir aesthetic. So there we go, and another one we do have a review of if you want to find out a little bit more, well, a lot more hopefully. All that's left to say is we have one Avoid. Now the Avoid might be controversial for some of you this week. It's a game that just came out. It's Hellboy Web of Weird, and it's a roguelite action game that, let's be honest, it looks amazing, doesn't it? But it is a buggy nightmare. I've experienced crashes, I've had glitching through the floor, the frame rate is pretty damn shocking. When you go to talk to anyone in the world, there's a delay of about 5 seconds before anything happens. It's just a bit of a mess, unfortunately. So do keep your eyes peeled on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on for things like our All Patched Up series. I know that saved a few people a few times. As well as our Buy or Avoid series, actually, like mini reviews. We've actually reviewed this one, so go check that out. Thanks to all of you, to our Patreons and members. Save yourself some money on any of your games. Check out all the links and stuff in the description. And yeah, I quite enjoyed making that one. Have a lovely weekend. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!